we're live and all that good stuff. Hi, Matt. Okay, go ahead.
How you doing? How you doing? Okay, so we're live and we're here to discuss today. We're joined this hour by Tika Lark, and we are here to discuss a number of things. But we're going to start off with talking about this new organization publication, the thing you're working on, Revolutionary Childhood.
Okay, yeah. It's what I'm calling it's called We'll Start Small. And it's kind of like a radical kid organization, and not like kid, but just children-centered social justice. Because I think a lot of times we start regards to politics too late. The right wing, they are like indoctrinating children when they're little, like, oh, work hard and like make money and, exploit people, don't trust people. I remember one time when I was, I'm in early childhood, and I remember one time when I was teaching these little children, and I said, ask your friends like for help. And they're like, that's cheating. So it's like, we've taught kids since they were like 5 years old, like, don't work together because that's cheating. And I'm like, what the hell? And the thing is that this kind of spurred from a book that I wrote. I'm writing kind of like radical children's stories. Mine is called What Every Child Should Know, and it's on Sanctuary Publishing. The press is owned by a person of color. She is, the person's amazing, and I'm very happy that they're publishing my book. It's called Sanctuary Publishing, but it's called What Every Child Should Know, and it kind of goes from, it talks about Black Lives Matter, it talks about science is real, it talks about water for life, like water is life, and it's, it talks about issues like LGBT issues. It talks about the environment. So, and it all, it talks about cooperation, because, I think we need to start having a history where we're starting to talk to younger children. But also too, We'll Start Small also has another component where we kind of talk about labor and talk about the labor of people who are not men, of women, of queer, of people, in regards to, like, for childcare. 97% of people in childcare are women. And in urban centers such as like Los Angeles and New York, they're largely women of color, or like Black, Latinx, Puerto Rican, Mexican. I hate like saying people of color. We're not white people. We actually can name who we are. Like, what and the fact that we get, women who are in childcare, even, white women, even indigenous women, of course, they get paid like our field is the lowest paying field. It is the lowest paying field. I mean, I'm trying to think, there's literally nothing you can do to make less money than work in early childhood education. And this is a place where you need to have units, you need to have a background check, you need, you're taking care of people's precious cargo. And like at the same point, we don't pay the people who do that job anything. So I mean, just kind of rambling on. You might want to question.
No, this is great stuff. I mean, this is like, I'm blown away by a lot of this. So yeah. We'll Start Small. How long is this book? You're covering like so many like point by point. Okay,
well, I'll tell you something. We'll Start Small is just a children's book. It's a little story book.
Yeah.
But What Every Child Should Know is a storybook. But We'll Start Small. Okay, that's going to be my second book, and it actually stands for The Revolution Will Start Small. It's also a children's book, but I mean, I built the website around that second book, and just kind of like, it's small. It starts off small in regards to the child as like an individual, like thinking about, I'm just free of myself, I'm just working. And then it's like, then they're kind of like within their local neighborhood, like, oh, I'm going to, I'm, fighting the teacher, not fighting, but like fighting the power of this local thing. And then they're like, oh, let's go to the class next door. Oh, let's go up the street. Let's make this national. Why are we just like making it about us? So it's like kind of like how you build from this kind of, but I mean, the website, it's all kind of part of that. The thing is that I've been, I have my master's is in early childhood education, and I've worked in early childhood education for way too long, which will date my age, but I've been worked in that field for, whether it be in higher ed, teaching teachers, developing curriculum, actually in the classroom of special education, preschool teacher for, over 15 years. But the thing that I notice is like, it's not, early childhood is one of the least radical fields. We're the least unionized. We're also, we work with children, and it's kind of like it's not respected. And I'm like, we need to have a kind of a radical framework around childhood. And even like I was having this conversation, and we were talking about student-centered and then teacher-centered. And I'm like, hey, let's have group-centered. Why are we centering on the individual? And then I kind of even thought about, even though my thing is called child-centered social justice, because I'm focusing on children, because so many times if we're not in the child sphere, what happens is we kind of like, oh, well, it's not, we only talk about children's stuff when it's siloed into like, oh, it's not Children's Day, it's not about education. And I'm kind of like, let's talk about it within economics, let's talk about it within labor, let's talk about it within all these things. But at the same time, I also have this belief that if you have children, I feel that children should understand that every generation matters. I don't feel that any generation should be just like, oh, it's everything we do is for you, which we kind of almost turn people's primary caregivers into like people that we don't respect, into slaves, because it's kind of like, oh, well, we're making it child-centered, but actually what that just means is the primary caregiver ceases to be a human being and becomes a tool to make this child happy. And we know that in regards to early childhood, we got two tracks: the tracks for the rich and the tracks for the rest of us. The tracks for where the people who are the maids and the cooks and all this stuff, and future workers, and then we have the track for the children of the architects and the developers and all this stuff. And so we start training children, oh, these people don't matter. The person that's taking care of me, your job is to center me. And I'm like, that should never be anybody's job. It's right. Tool for someone else, and children shouldn't be taught that. And it's like, for me, I'm just kind of like, we just need to up in and like kind of like destroy and dismantle this whole early childhood education system, because even when we're trying to do right, we end up doing this jacked up thing, So I mean,
no, it's like the Richard Pryor movie, The Toy.
Exactly. We don't care about you, but I'm like, it's something about it that's so wrong and bizarre, and that's not how I think it was supposed to be. Yeah.
It's certainly not how it should be. Geez, that you got me all. I mean, talking about starting small and like got me like the walkouts. I almost want to get up and walk out right now. I don't know where I would go. I mean, I can do that up with me and we'll go march.
Okay, where are we gonna go? I'm like,
right now, obviously, I don't want to be part of those marches, but wow. Okay, so much. There's so much there. Yeah. Wow. Okay, so. So in these communities, in the United States of America, the kind of the oppressed communities, too many to name, but so many different. There's this concept of the talk, right? You have to have this talk with your kids, and we always ask like how young or old, or like, oh my God, your kid's 11, you have to talk with them yet? You're fucking up. Or oh my God, your kid's only 6, and you had to talk with them. What's wrong with you? And there's like this kind of like, what's the perfect age for the talk? Is a really clear reflection that the schools have said, no, that's your responsibility. We're teaching this rosy version of America. Your kid's pledging allegiance, and you can have whatever talks you need to have with them. But what you're talking about is like putting it right up front that this is the way things are, and you need to run this.
But also too, like empowering people, not like kind of like not giving excuses for like racism and imperialism and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, we're talking about what's wrong. But we're not also telling them like, oh, this is how you survive this. It's like, this is how you dismantle this. Like, we need to like start training like our little warriors early. Like, I mean, that's kind of like my thing. I'm like, I want to train these kids early. Don't want to burn this down. I mean, that's
I love it.
Now I won't be able to use this and show this to other teachers. Like, here, see, this is a tape of me telling you how to tell kids how to burn things down. No, I'm just talking about figuratively, not literally, people. Okay. But I mean, that kind of goes into, I wrote this essay that actually ended up being really popular about essential workers and childcare, and like going to the whole COVID thing. We're talking about essential workers, and it's kind of like people who are essential workers. I'm like, if you're a primary caregiver, you are an essential worker. Like, no matter what your job is, if you take care of a child, you are an essential worker. Okay, now the thing is this, is that say you're a primary caregiver and you have another job in addition to your job of raising your child. Okay, that person definitely would need childcare, right? Because you can't do two jobs, or that person would need to have, their job to be their job outside of taking care of a child be reasonable and be like, we're going to pay you and you can do, you don't, not have to do this job right now. Or the government, if it was decent, would be like, hey, we're going to give you guys stipends because you have to watch this kid. Okay, so since none of these things are happening, and even when we do have childcare for essential workers and first responders, I'm just kind of in my head like, so are we paying these childcare workers more money? Are they still going to be the lowest paid people? Because the thing is, too, childcare right now is the people who are the owners of the agency, the owners of the childcare centers like KinderCare, Bright Star, all the stuff. They're asking for $50 billion of stimulus money, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. And I even like told everybody, yeah, you should totally support that. But also now I'm like in my head, I'm like, I really want to make sure that $50 billion, a big portion of it goes to actually paying the workers, paying the child workers, whether they're the teaching assistants or the teachers. I'm done. I'm done with this. You're going to pay somebody $10 to watch a child and being okay with that. How did we allow this system? Actually, know how the system developed, but we don't got time for that. But it's kind of like the same way they kind of, when the U.S. kind of like said we have to have a minimum wage and pay people in union, and yet they left out the farm workers, they left out the people who take care of children, they left out any job that people of color did in large numbers so that they can to exploit us. And that thing is still happening. But the thing is that, of course, in childcare you still have poor white people being also exploited, because in the middle of the country they won't let us move there, so they have to exploit poor white people to do those jobs. So it's actually just hurting everyone. I mean, just like you think about COVID, I always laugh. I'm like, people think those people who are marching the March for Freedom or whatever the hell they are, people think that, oh, what they're doing is they're ignorant of science and they don't know. I'm like, they totally freaking know. They're like, that's a genocidal mission. They know that more of us will die than them, and they're willing to risk their life.
Take one for the team, yeah.
And I don't think people really understand that. I don't think people I think they just go, oh, I hate using the term stupid, but they're like, oh, those people are just stupid. They don't know. I'm like, they totally freaking know what they're doing. This is totally the reason why we don't have universal child care, the reason why we don't have universal health care, the reason why our college went up after the civil rights movement, and they allowed Indigenous people, Mexicans, and Black people into college. They were like, you know what? We're going to defund it now. College used to be, that's why people go like, well, I paid for college. I'm like, college was $1 because when it was only a white-only benefit, they funded it. As soon as we were able to access that, they defunded it. So the thing is that them making college, forgiving student loans and making college free at predominantly minority serving institutions, it's not giving us anything. You got like decades of subsidized college. Your parents, your grandparents, number one colleges that we could get into, and now you're like acting like, oh, we're getting something extra. No, you took stuff away, and your family. Your family, your mother, your grandmother voted to screw you because Black people and Chicano people and Indigenous people got access to it. And now we're supposed to have this. That's why I said I refuse to take part in these narratives that are not even the conversation. Like we have to just take control of the narrative and just be I'm not ask questions. I'm just talking.
Another quick example we're talking about is the move to dismantle the post office.
Yes.
These are decent jobs. These are these are jobs that you can have a house, or have a living wage. We'll call that, and it's a lot of Black people have jobs there. A lot of so-called Latinos have jobs there. A lot of people people who don't normally have living wage jobs have those jobs, and so it needs to be dismantled. It needs to be taken away. It needs to be destroyed. It needs to be replaced by Amazon workers who are also largely Black and Latino and who don't have a living wage.
Yes. I mean, it's amazing. It's like, yeah, and the thing is, that was the thing. People in the post office that used to organize, that used to be a place where if you were a college educated Black person, you could get a job and you could you could organize from there and you could have a wage and then you could like live where's a family. Because the thing is, this is that people kind of have this weird vision of organizing that means you have to suffer. And I'm like, actually, if you don't have food, if you don't have shelter, if you don't have you can't take care of yourself, you can't organize. Taking away jobs like the post office, taking away teaching jobs, all those kind of things, taking away tenure for college professors. I mean, the thing is that you really destroy movements when you do that. Because if you're sitting there like this whole, this idea like you're supposed to make $10 an hour and struggle and all this stuff, that's a false narrative that they put out there so that you will, to destroy, to make us think like we have to suffer. That's one thing I always liked about you when you did your poetry. You're like, you got to pay me. Yes. I'm like that. I'm like, this is good. This is how you're supposed to think. And we don't think that way. A lot of us, not we, but like people on the left, a lot of people on the left don't have that. They don't understand that the right has put propaganda out there to make us kill ourselves, Yeah. And but yeah, the post office is like we have to save the post office. That's an important institution. It's one of our, we don't think about it. One of our few universal supports. We have Social Security, which is a universal support. We have K-12, which is one of our universal supports, and we have the post office. No matter where you live, they have to deliver your mail. No matter where you live, I mean that's amazing because you try to overnight something using UPS, it's expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think the interesting thing about that, but we mentioned about demanding to get paid. I don't know if it's because I have a deeper resume now, or it's because people don't do that as much now. But I feel like there's more. I feel like there's more of a because I don't know. There seems to be this thing on the left that like if you profess leftist politics, you shouldn't get paid, or if you have like leftist politics, you shouldn't be paid as an artist, or you shouldn't be ever make money to say things that would improve people's lives. You should only make money if you're going to say things that are like terrible, like. And I don't know where this huh?
Where'd that come from? And also, too, doesn't that kind of almost make it so that only white people of privilege can do that? Then I mean, that's almost you're essentially just saying that you could only talk on the left if you're rich enough to not have to get paid. And essentially, that's what happens, right? All these fund people are like, oh, well, see, I don't get paid. I'm like, oh, because your ancestors, were able to exploit and kill people. So, of course, you don't have to get paid now because you can live off that blood money. But we don't have that. And then you can try to make me feel guilty. That's the whole thing, too. I remember, like, people, when I talk to people on the left, specifically some white people, they get very kind of like, oh, you have a college degree. Oh, you have a car. You blah, blah, blah. You're not actually as down as I am. I'm like, do you know how freaking radical it is to continue to be me and yet continue to, to actually be able to make money? Yeah. If I were playing that game, I would be in the street, in jail. That's the whole thing. Like they don't even understand their privilege. They run their mouths and they don't even understand what they have. There's not even. It's like they're so disrespectful. Just be quiet and don't worry about what I'm doing. Just like if I have friends that have less money, have less access than me, and they do some interesting things. Even when they're on Facebook, you want to be like, well, I wouldn't do that. I don't say nothing because I don't know. I don't talk about it.
I mean, it's like, you're criticizing the United States attempting to overthrow the government in Venezuela, but I don't see you swimming in a river of sludge and sleeping in the gutter. Like, what the fuck? What are you saying? Like, what? Like,
what kind of games are you like? What? Yeah, I mean, I just kind of like I just keep it moving. I just do what I need to do, and I don't worry about it. I just do what I need to do. I'm not gonna say. To me, every day that I'm not suffering, I'm winning in this country. Every day I'm not, because that's what they try to do.
Yeah, now there's a really bizarre. I feel again within the left this cult of discomfort, like this idea that we need to like be sleeping in the dirt, having uncomfortable conversations about our head. You know, it's just like this.
Well, even like I remember I told somebody, I said, you know, the difference between me and you is that you will fight for the right for somebody to sleep on a park bench, and I'm going to fight for the right for somebody to have a house. I'm not going to. I'm not going to advocate for you to have something I wouldn't want. If I wouldn't want that for me, I mean, of course, you know, everybody is their own person, but I'm just saying, I'm not going to advocate for you to have shit. Now, there's some people, that's what they do. They think I'm like, that's some neoliberal. I want you to be free. I don't want you to be comfortable in this crappy life. This crappy, I don't want you to be, I want you to be free. I want you to be liberated. I want you to have the most comfortable life you can have. I don't want you to be comfortable in violence, you know, and sleeping on a park bench. That's violent. Why would I advocate for that life for you? And it's like they try to explain, like, no, but you're wasting too much time. The amount of effort you could have just been like, hey, this person deserves this person, we need houses. I keep telling people, I'm like, if it were people like you, we would have Black people would still be slaves. It would just be like, well, if you're this complexion, you could be free. If you were of this state, you could be. If you have a college degree, you could be free. But you still, I'm like, this is the kind of stuff you do. We would be slaves still if you, or some of us would be, if we negotiate the way you people negotiate on you neoliberals, nonprofit industrial complex. You know, you got to write a manifesto or a about page that degrades our people. You know, it's like, how crappy can you make all of us and our communities look in order to get this change from these rich, you know, exploiting imperialist? Oh, here's $5,000. That's nothing. I'm supposed to be grateful for that. I'm not grateful for that. I'm not going to be grateful for the change. You know, you have more than enough money to give, and I have to. You think I'm going to degrade myself for that little bit of money? You know, I mean, yeah. I'm saying I wouldn't. You know,
who knows? I mean, you know, Santa Monica City College. I got invited. I was invited to go out there, and I was like, okay, well, what's the budget? And then they're like, oh, there's no budget. And I'm like, well, look, dude, I'm a kind of working artist, man. So, and you know what this guy said to me? This is the president of the student body. He says to me, well, you know, like maybe you can come dumpster diving with me on Saturday. There's like this really good blah 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 behind the Whole Foods in Venice or something like that. Now this kid, I mean, I did some research on him. This kid is like the son of like he was a son, well, he still is a son, but I mean, you know, he's not in school anymore. But he was, you know, the son of a very wealthy attorney, all kinds of like, you know, just he's a millionaire's kid, right? And he's saying like he's gonna go dumpster diving. He's like, yeah, man, I know times are rough, and you know, I hear you about working artists, but I'm just a student, blah 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 blah. And then, you know, I wasn't asking him for his money. I was asking him to do paperwork, which he didn't want to do. And his response was like, well, since you're an artist that needs, you know, help, I'm going to invite you to go dumpster diving with me.
You probably told an anecdote about that. And, you know, the thing is, like, you know, he said he needed money, but he didn't actually, like, you know, I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And that's like so like patronizing. And like, so, I mean, the thing is that I've worked at agencies and things like that. And the amount of money that people pay, well, essentially pay white people, and the how they want us to do things for free. You know, I want to pick your brain for free. I want you to like give this thing for free. I want you whatever. And it's like, and how many credentials we need to have in order for them to think it's okay for us to pay us. And how if you're a white guy, you just pop out the trash can. Hi, I have a
I'm the student body president.
Yeah. So I would like to be part of this. And you're just like, you know, I mean, it's just why I've walked away from some stuff, because I've been like, oh, I've tried to like work with people. I've tried to do certain things with people. And then it's like, you know, I've negotiated, and it's been like, it'll take like maybe like a year for me to get into somewhere. And then some white person with like no credentials just pops up. Oh, I'd like to do this. Okay, man, you want to work with Lark? I'm like, and then I just walk away. I'm like, you know, I'm done here. Because I thought maybe it was just, oh, you know, I'll think sometimes, well, maybe it's just an organization. They have a way to do things. But then when I see that, I'm just like, I'm out. You know, I'm so now because we're in the COVID era, I'm so used to. I'm just like so. I'm out. Like I'm not going to waste a minute on people on projects that I feel are racially violent towards me. If I feel like a bit, even a bit, I'm done.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and I feel it. I feel it strongly. I think but I think also, it's fun to have these stories, and it's fun to laugh at people who have wronged us. But you also have shown a great model, not just in the things you've mentioned in this interview, but overall, you've always been, politically or artistically or independent. You've always like done things outside. You never waited for an organization to give you a green light to get something off the ground. Like, if they're gonna treat you that way, fine. I'm out of here. I'm gonna do my own thing. Whether it's the black girl, what was it, black girl book fair, or what you're doing now. You've always had that mentality to just make a thing happen. Like if I'd rather, instead of like trying to climb up it's a big building. It looks beautiful. They're telling me I'm gonna get the corner office, but I'm never really gonna get this. It's a lie. It's a lie. So instead of doing that, I'm gonna go over here to the warehouse and throw a giant party, and it's gonna be It's gonna be more people are gonna be at my party than in that building. And you've always had that kind of attitude. And I commend you for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I really try to, just because it's for me, it's just important to. I mean, the thing is that I might getting paid from somebody else, but I always feel like I want to, the thing is that I've always want us to have things I want to be in a dignified manner. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I always want the people of my community, whether those people are Black, Latino, I want everybody to have a respectful. The thing is that half my family, like my mom's side of the family, they are African American. Like I'm like fourth generation Angelino, fifth generation. My dad's side of the family is from Belize, and so like for me, it's like my people, like my mother's people, they're Creole, and then my dad's people are from Belize, and they've always been very like proud of like who they are. I'm not saying other people are not proud, but I've always had this thing where I'm going to do things in a dignified manner. I'm not going to degrade myself. I'm not going to degrade my community, and I'm not going to beg. I will, I can make my own money. I can make my own thing. I can work with people, whatever. And that to me is like more important. Like every time I try to work with like these like I'll try to work with somebody, but I'm just like, you're disrespectful. I'm not going to let you disrespect. I'm not going to host something that will disrespect people in the community. That's just not going to happen. That's never going to happen. There's nothing to me that's even that I would even do that. So I mean, if I'm going to do a project, and if I work with you, I'm going to pay you. You know what I mean? If I do a project with you, I'm going to pay you. And too many times when I work with organizations, like, can you make people do for free? Like when I was in New Jersey, like somebody wanted a muralist for this bike thing, and they wanted to pay the muralist like $100. And I was like, this is outrageous. And I took ownership of it. I said, my organization is going to take half of it. And I raised him like over $1,000 to do that mural, because I'm like, nothing that my name is attached to it, you're going to get paid a fair wage. Because number one, I'm going to get paid. I'm going to make sure I'm going to get paid. I'm going to make sure you're going to get paid. Anybody who works with me, they get paid. I make sure I will shake them down, we'll shake the imperialists down, and we will all give them money.
Yeah. Take the coins out.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. So you're out. I mean, so you're kind of in California. I'm not a big fan. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Gavin Newsom in general speaking terms, because he's governor of a capitalist state and blah blah blah. But he's done a relatively good job of maintaining the virus, whatever. You're in a state where that's maybe not so true, or you're in a part of the country where that it's maybe not been handled very, or the outbreak is much worse. So
it's more people.
Mm-hmm.
It's closer. Like, I'll say something. If you go to New York, okay, and where I am is right next door. I'm like in the suburb. Mm-hmm. Imagine Mad Men. Remember where Peggy, where Betty lived? I I'm in like suburbia. Okay, so the thing is that when you want to think about the 405 freeway,
Okay.
think about it at rush hour.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is what New York would be like the 405 freeway, but instead of cars, it's people. And it's just people, just waves of people walking. And then imagine a really hot sauna, but then you put it on wheels and you put it underground. That is the subway. So you have all these people. You have this steamy subway. And you know how in LA we have space?
Yeah.
The first time I like had like dinner in like a fancy restaurant in New York, and the person was like right here, like I can hear them. I'm like, I can hear you talking. I mean, no, it doesn't sound so LA. I'm like, I can hear you talking, and it's bothering me.
Yeah.
Everybody here is like super loud. I mean, no, I'm like being really loud now. But I'm like, so it's like everybody's like really close, and I had to get used to people like brushing up against me. Like when you walk, you know how I remember this in LA, people will bump to you like, wow, you're starting something. But in here, you have to get used to people touching you. People
absolutely
touch you all the time. It's gonna be like you can't walk. People are gonna like brush past you. So you have a contagious thing like the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Like that's why it's like we're kind of like very much like you got to stay inside. But the thing is that even when you're outside in New York, it feels like you're inside. Like, remember the person who did the Million Trees program in Los Angeles?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, remember how that program was really ridiculous because California, we always feel like we're outside and it's a desert?
Yeah.
That person was from New York. So the thing is that, yeah, that's why it was so ridiculous. And once I went to New York, I was like, oh, I see why he did that. Because in New York, even when you're outside, because of the high buildings, it feels like you're inside, and it feels like you want to like you're like if this would be hell. Like if hell were on Earth, it would be in New York City. I mean, like regards to how it's set up. And I was like, oh. And then it just really like dawned on me like how like I mean I understood the whole tree program, but then I also understood like how LA like how that was so ridiculous and made no sense because we're outside all the time. We don't even think about it. We don't even think about our outsideness because we're so outside. It's just part of who we are. It's like you're outside. It's not a big deal. It's not like, oh, I went outside today. It's
there's a building, there's a mountain, there's a tree.
It's just life. But here, like, oh my God, like people go outside and they're like, what's outside? Look, a tree. It's like it's so. But I mean, what I'm saying is, it's amazingly hard to be separate. And if there's a disease, it's gonna kill everybody. It's gonna kill everybody.
Well, I think you and I have talked about this, or maybe I've just talked about this with so many people that and it's such an obvious thing. But like, yeah, anytime I've gone to New York or other cities on the East Coast, I feel like everyone's trying to fight me because in LA, if you were to put your forearm on the back of my neck like that, it would mean we were about to fight, right? Yeah. You don't just put your forearm on the back of my neck, right?
Yeah.
And then by the third or fourth day I'm out there, I'm like the worst New Yorker. I'm like kicking people out of my way. I'm like you're not gonna just push me, and I'm just gonna take it and be pushed. So like I don't have a New York speed. I have my like LA, like, why are you touching me? Excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, and I'm getting like pushed around, right? So my fifth day where I'm just like a criminal. I'm just like, like, I don't have the proper middle.
Like, people from LA, we don't walk fast enough either. Like we just kind of like boring. We just kind of like walk around and we're like people get kind of upset because the first time I went to New York, the first time I came out of the World Trade Center and I'm looking at my phone, okay, which is really bad, and I'm looking at my phone, I'm like, la la la. Everyone's like, get out of the way! I was like, what's going on?
Why are you yelling?
Out of the way, and you just start looking at your phone. You don't do that in New York. People get very, very upset with you. And it's just You know, it's
Okay, so I lived in Dallas though for 2 years, right? And I felt like people were moving too slow. I'm like, what's wrong with people? You know, like so I feel like the LA speed's kind of a Goldilocks thing. It's like, you know, like I go to the South, this is too slow. You know, like I go somewhere else. This is or New Mexico. I went to New Mexico. I felt everyone was like in touch with like, you know, nature or communing with something. I was like, hurry up, give me my stuff. I need it now. But then I'm in New York. I'm like, calm the fuck down, man. I'll order when I'm ready. You know, so it's like you get used to your speed of life, I think.
You just like, I mean, but the thing is that when I go into the city, I'm very much like, I can't, like, I have to like me just getting to the destination, I gotta like sit down. Like I can't, like, I don't know how people like get there and then do something, like go to work. Like, it's like, to me, getting to like into the city in itself is a job. Like that right there, like I get to like, get on the subway and get to the destination. Like I got there, I need a coffee, I need to break. That's the thing too. Another thing that's funny out here is that people work like dogs. I mean, like work starts at 9. They're like at 9 o'clock. They're working, and people don't go to lunch here. And people want to work off of the. That's why I start working remotely. I was like, oh no, I can't do that. I'm from Los Angeles. We don't do that.
Yeah. So we have we got 2 comments here. Karina. So the interesting thing about New York is some people love it though. Some people love it. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, you love it. It's one of those love it hate situations. Karina says, Tika, you are making me homesick for Manhattan. I miss brick wall 6 inches from my window. There's no way you are going to avoid people pushing up against you all day long, especially on the subway. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Would you have a?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even like even if they went to the bathroom, their bathrooms are really tiny, and they don't have like seat covers. Apparently, seat covers is just a California thing. I'm like, oh my god! I just came off the subway. Now I can't go to the bathroom. I gotta actually like touch the toilet. Come on, no.
Karina.
But also too, I want to be. That's what I kind of just want to explain to people why the coronavirus is so extreme there, and not because people aren't doing what they're supposed to do. It's just because the amount of people, there's like literally no. I mean, if we had a competent government, they would have been like, oh, heads up, guess what? We've got a really contagious thing. You guys should just hang out and stay home. But there would be no way once it got out if we didn't know, because of the way it's set up. So I always tell people, I'm like, yes, it's really great that California is not as severe in regards to this, but it's a lot easier in California to not, because you're in your car, you're walking by yourself. So it's a lot easier to social distance there. Oh, and also too, the Black and like Latino communities in New York are doing horribly in regards to the COVID-19, because also those communities, they are farther away. They're farther away, have to take more trains, and where they live is like, you know, very tight and it's lots of people. Like the buildings are very, very high. So it's like you've got all these people in the building, and it's like, I mean, you know, one way in, one way out. There's some of them. It almost looks like it's a fire hazard to me. But I mean, people are dying in their apartments. I mean, all these people. I mean, I don't know if it's just been reported, but you know what they're saying. Queens is a hot spot. Also the Bronx. The Bronx is I'm essentially like, almost everybody I know from the Bronx has a person affected by COVID-19. Like every single person I know from the Bronx, which is kind of scary. It'd be like, you know, everybody, if you knew somebody from Inglewood, like everybody you knew in Inglewood, somebody had COVID-19. That's how it is here. Like everybody from the Bronx, somebody has COVID-19. And they're least likely to get tested. Like, you know, people are less likely to get tested in these communities. They're farther away. They're usually essential workers, so they can't take off. You know, or they have a good job, and the good job is driving the train or driving the bus, or working for the post office. And these are all jobs that continuously expose you to this deadly virus, and that that in combination with the disparity of care, which means you go to the doctor and they're like, leave. Like, you're fine, just go home. So people who have it are told to go home and then spread it around to their family. And they in these huge buildings, like, you know what I mean? Like I said, it's like if somebody has COVID-19 and they are in the city, you should hospitalize them and segregate them immediately, because they're going to infect. It's highly contagious. It's like twice as contagious as a flu. So that person's going to infect probably somebody in their house, somebody on the way home, somebody on the train. Like, why would you send them home? Why? Like, I mean, we can't find masks here because there's so many people. There are no masks. There's no bleach. I have no bleach. I have no Lysol. I just got some gloves. I mean, and this is like a month. This has been going on a month. And I haven't been able to get these basic things because people went in and they just bought everything. And I literally couldn't get anything till yesterday. And I just got these little cheesy gloves. I just can't leave the house, which is bad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky I had to connect to a restaurant retailer to get my toilet paper. So I had like a roll. I got like a box full of 48, and I don't. Yeah. I'm not even trying to mess around with other stuff. The conversation took a pretty serious turn from where we were about the speed of it. But I would just point out that Karina, who's full disclosure, is my partner. She's up in the Bay Area. So there's kind of a speed to the Bay Area that's kind of similar to LA. The density a little more. And then we got another comment here from Milton, who is from Chicago. It says, sounds like you got to come balance yourself out in Chicago. Somewhere between LA and New York.
It's to me, New York is like an extreme. It's so extreme. There's no like in between to me. Like to me, like a lot of people in Chicago. New
York is not New York.
A lot of people in Chicago like to think they're close to New York, but when I went to Chicago, it was nothing like New York. It was. I mean, it's a city, but it's not like. New York is so crowded and so fast. There's really no comparison within the U.S. It almost has, to me, a feeling like when this is like in the 90s when I was in Hong Kong. It almost has a feeling like that. The hustle and bustle and urgency. I don't think Chicago had that urgency. Everybody in New York is like, oh my God! They're all even like New Jersey. Everybody is very much like, oh my God! Like everybody's in this sense of panic. I'm still confused at what they're panicking about. I mean, now maybe it was this. Maybe they knew about COVID. I don't know, but they're all like panicked like all the time. Like everybody's upset like all the time. And the thing is so funny is that I met this woman, and she's really sweet. I'm gonna tell you her another part of her story, which is really funny, but I'll tell you off camera. She's from Peru, and she's a PhD PhD linguist, and she used to teach at the university. And she complained all the time. The way she talked was very much like, oh my God, like my son doesn't live with me anymore, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, what, why didn't you live with me? And he's like, oh, well, he's a doctor. I'm like, and he has a wife. I'm like, well, he's a doctor and he's a wife and he has kids and he lives in California. Why would he live with you? Then I realized something. She's a linguist. So while her native language was Spanish, she learned English on the East Coast, and they complain when they talk. So she thought that was part of the American accent. I was like thinking she was like she's upset. Like she's like, oh, my son, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and then I realized, I'm like, oh, she's not upset. She's just copying the way people talk out here, and I thought that was really funny because I was like, I once I realized that, I'm like, because I was like, what are these bizarre conversations? Why is her tone like this? And because everybody on the East Coast like complains all the time, so she thought that was just part of an American accent.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the pony opera.
Yeah. And it wasn't that. She wasn't upset. She just thought that's how you talk.
Yeah. In Chicago, though, I have seen them move with urgency during like those polar vortexes.
Yeah.
I was there for one in like 2000 and I don't know 10 or 11 or I don't remember. It wasn't the last one, but I think it was the one before that. And I saw people just running from like little place to place, just scurrying the city like squirrels. City of broad shoulders, my ass, man. They were moving quick. I was too. It was so cold. I forgot how keys worked. I put the key in the door and it wouldn't open, and I forgot to turn it. And I'm like, this isn't fair. Let me in. Just.
Well, that's what I said about. I said, in LA, you could lose your keys and it's not a big deal. Like on the East Coast, you lose your keys, you could die. I'm like, wow, you really have to have a maybe that's part of the whole urgency thing. Like, oh my God, like, in LA, you lose your keys, you go to Starbucks, you just move on with life, just wait till somebody comes home. Here, you lose your keys, it's a blizzard, and you're dead. And it's like, wow. Like, you get drunk, like, say you were drinking, go home, and you're like, you can't find your keys. People will actually find you dead on the porch. I was like, wow, that really does make you act a little bit more concerned about stuff.
That'll put some pep in your step for sure.
Yeah. That don't happen in Los Angeles. I mean, I've seen some things on the East Coast because when things go bad here, they go real bad. I'm not saying that in LA things don't go bad, but I think they take bad to a whole new level out here. Like, I mean, I just saw a guy and he was, and I'm not. This is not me making fun of him or anything like that, but he had his left leg was missing and his right arm was missing, and he was like running for the bus. Like he's running. He's like with a little like with a can. I mean, and I'm like, I've never seen anybody with some hustle like that in Los Angeles. Like people just like they would just be like, you know what, I'm just done. Like, you know what, forget this bus. And the thing is, the buses and things kind of run out here, so there's no reason to keep running because another one's going to come in like 5 minutes. So why are you running? And I think that's the thing I'm always kind of wondering, like, why is everybody in a hurry? Because another train comes in like 2 minutes. It's not like in Los Angeles where you miss a train and it's like you got to wait maybe an hour or maybe an entire day. Who the hell knows?
You're not going to die. So, I mean, the chance of death are they're possible, but they're not. There's not a lot of compounding factors. Like, there's not like.
Yeah, and no one ever. And the thing is that people here are always like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, there's so many buses, so many trains, so much stuff, but it's like it's also ultra competitive. So I think maybe that's what it is. I'm not quite sure, but yeah.
So back to the what we were talking about earlier, the children's books. Where can people find these, and what should they be looking out for?
Well, it's going to come out in the summer. What Every Child Should Know is going to come out in the summer on Sanctuary Publishing. I'll let people know. It should be like Amazon. It's going to be like a big release and stuff like that, so people will know. They'll probably be able to find it on We'll Start Small, the website, willstartsmall.com. But, the other one will have like a normal book release. So that should, where people, could find it. But like I say, it'll be in the summer. So this is kind of like my first introducing people to the book and things.
Another interesting project. I'm not sure if you're still doing it, but I'm curious about the inspiration behind it. Black Kids in Outer Space.
Yes, it was about. It was about urban planning and transportation. The thing is that, I mean, it went well for a while because I got some Kickstarter funding. But the thing is that, you're going against development. It's always very challenging when you have a news show and you're talking about developers because they want to, gentrify people out of their homes and they want to make the project that they want to make. And they want people educated in the way that they want to be educated. So, essentially what they'll just do is just co-opt all your ideas. Like, kind of like, I used to have the bus bench and, and then Streets Blog came along right after I did. I mean, I was the first editorial blog on transportation in Los Angeles, and Streets Blog came essentially just kind of like anything that I would have been able to get from that. They kind of like took it. And then all the things I wrote about in regards to race, they kind of like hired another person to kind of like write like, look, a community garden. I'm like, hey, why are we getting funding to like actually get projects done and like, in like brown and black communities? And they're like, hey, a community garden. Hey, a bunch of black kids riding a bike. So it became, it's always really challenging. I mean, I hope to restart it again.
Yeah.
It's a project that I really liked, and I wanted to interview more people. I wanted to go, my mother plan was I wanted to try to like take it to maybe a reservation and see how that worked in regards to, because a lot of reservations are actually really far from public transportation, and like I wanted to kind of like explore that, and I wanted to also kind of like do a top 10 most dangerous roads for people. And I kind of wanted to show where it was, because they seemed to all be in like black neighborhoods. It wasn't like, it was like the most dangerous roads. Like, look, this isn't a black neighborhood and this isn't a black neighborhood. Isn't that weird? But maybe we'll visit that again. I'll visit it again, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's you always find very interesting and creative ways to talk about the worst things happening in the country.
Yeah.
So that's really it's quite a gift. I mean, even when we started this conversation, you started talking about how our children are all indoctrinated into horrible, culturally genocidal indoctrination for themselves. We were excited to talk about it. You made me excited. I was like, yeah, yeah. So yeah. So I really commend that in you, that so much of what you do doesn't have a defeatist spirit. There's always an air that we can win, but we just gotta gotta.
I'm also an entertainer, so it's like people don't want to be bummed out. Like they're like, well, you know what? If you just want to quit and die, then we will too. Bye. Like no one's gonna sit to like listen to you. Be defeatist. I mean, if I didn't think we could win, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do what I do. So that's kind of like my, those are final words.
Those are good words. Those are good words. So final plugs, and let people know where, just one more time, just reiterate.
Okay, WillStartSmall.com, and my book was called What Every Child Should Know, and it's on Sanctuary Publishing. And that's about it for right now. So you can just know, you can find me on Twitter at WillStartSmall.
We'll start small. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Tika, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you on the webs.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Matt.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.